Look, I was going to run through a presentation. I'm still very happy to do the presentation. But I understand you've got a lot of questions from the sessions this morning. I should have been on second this morning, and I can assure you that I had made the right plans to arrive here on time, in fact, a bit early at 9:20, but the weather had other arrangements. But can I quickly ask, as many of you go to the Foundations Conference in October? There's many of you there? Just a few. Right, okay, well, I might get away with some of the jokes that I used there. Well, the reason why I'm asking, actually, more importantly, is the presentation I was going to do is very much what I was going to say there. And I can break it down into a number of areas, but I think you'll already know all this now. So what it is, we have this new fund called the Integrated Transition Fund, except it's not anymore. Transformation. Oh, is it transformation? I've heard it so many times that I've actually, it's like I always struggle to spell offered. I can't remember if it's 2 F's or 1. You know, and like, what is it? Because I've got it wrong so often. It's actually not called that anymore. It's called the Better Care Fund. Lorraine decided not to say that this morning, but I'm going to say it. So I can remember that in the moment. But I would have gone into it and explained it's an opportunity, hence the title of the presentation. It really is an opportunity because there's this big pool of funding. Disabled Facilities Grant will be part of it. I know that actually some home improvement agencies don't see any Disabled Facilities Grant, so it may not have that particular impact, but the opportunity is still there. And what the opportunity is to display to people that are from organisations that may well not, probably don't in many areas, know what you do and show the offer that you have. And the offer that you have is to support people to stay safe and well in their own home and stop them going into long-term NHS or residential care, which A, the country increasingly is not going to be able to afford as our population gets older, and B, actually, for the quality of life, is not the solution, unless it's absolutely necessary. So I was going to go through all that, but I think you've been through that. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, and the reason why, following on from the Foundation Conference, these seminars have been set up, is we are concerned that the sector is not actually prepared for this for a number of reasons, and perhaps the main reason being that this is all being introduced very quickly. And I will go through one slide. This is stuff you know, and you've heard all this. This is what we usually do. This is how government usually works. We set up pilots. Trailblazers was the buzzword about 3-4 years ago. Pioneers are the buzzword now. Department of Health really likes the term pioneers. Yeah, I was in a meeting yesterday, and somebody said, do you know about the pioneers? And I was thinking, what, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whatever. I know, it's what we used to call pilots, now Trailblazers. Them Trailblazers are now pioneers. Usually a year, 2 years. In fact, Michelle here, you will know all about it being a trailblazer for a DWP initiative called Right to Control. Then we have to consult on it, get the feedback of the pioneers, probably pay for some academic researchers to research it. Then we run training events like this, and then it gets rolled out. And it's at least 2 years, usually 3. And we don't do any of that for this. The Integrated Transition Fund is actually coming in well, it comes in 2015-16, but the draft plan has to be submitted to Department of Health ministers for sign off next April. If it's not being written, it should be, and it will be soon. And I actually know of some areas where it's actually the drafts are already being circulated. Now, of course, the whole idea is to bring about integration. A word, Department of Health is very keen on this, I think rightly so. As we all know, integrating the National Health Service and other services, delivery services, is not that easily done. And I think that you get a lot of leadership on that from the top, because I used to work in Department of Health, and I work in Department of Communities and Local Government. I did spend 4 years working in a special unit. Tony Blair, if you remember him, set up called the Social Exclusion Unit. It was going to join up government. That's something we failed to do dismally. I think we did make an effort, But we know that we work in silos, and there's nothing local authorities can teach government about working in silos. We're masters at it, even though we don't think we do it. Only yesterday I was speaking to somebody in the Department of Health who was saying, I didn't know any of this, despite the fact I've been telling this person's colleagues about disabled facilities grant for the last 3 months. The messages don't get back. You know what it's like. I know what it's like. But I'm afraid here you're not going to get the same sort of initiative and pressure from central government to the coal face that you used to get in the past. That's not going to happen. Like I say, it's already happening. And this is where the push needs to come from the people who could deliver services. And one of the other things I'm very concerned about is no matter how good your service is, and we know that there's a lot of good delivery out there, but no matter how good your service is, the people that are writing these plans may not know, or probably in some cases have no idea. I think it's always difficult to rely on second and third hand accounts, but I heard a third or fourth hand account the other day, I mean literally this week, where somebody said they'd been knocking on the door of the public health director in their own local authority, saying we have to contribute to the draft plan that's being written up, and a director of public health in their own local authority said, why? What's it got to do with you? They were only from the housing department, so it's a very good question, I think, and it's that type of lack of knowledge, or you could say ignorance, that you're going to have to solve. You're not going to get the solution from above. You're going to have to solve it. And I think one of the concerns is that it's like I say, it's a different situation everywhere. I know of one place where the plan that's been drafted, nobody's consulted with not only the housing directorate but the local authority in turn. If you're an independent home improvement agency who relies on commissioning and contracting from the centre, then how you're going to be able to say, this is what we can do, this is what we deliver, I'm afraid is the way that you have to work it out. And I think in this day and age, this is something I've been discussing with the Foundation's advisory board a lot, is that just doing the service alone is not enough. I'm afraid that there is a thing about publicity, self-promotion. And one of the good things is you're now working, or the funding opportunities are with, a lot of it is coming from the health service. And a health service is very much into facts and figures. It's a very data-rich service. So you can show, look how many people we help, look how little it costs, relatively speaking. That type of thing will get an audience, and I think will get listened to. It's just getting your foot in the door. So really, that I've run through what I was going to say in about 25 minutes, in about 10. Lucky you on that. If you would like, I know you've got a lot of questions coming up from this morning. There's a lot more I could say, which I'm happy to do so, but all I suggest is I take some questions. So if anybody, the one thing I have been asked to say, the funding mechanism, I presume you would like me to run through that? Okay, well, if I had a blank page, that's what I'd be shown, because it's not yet finalised. What we are trying to do, we are well aware of the mandatory requirement around disabled facilities grants, and whereas that's not an official ring fence, it does in some ways act as that way. All the way through the ambition since this fund has been set up, and it was really only talked about May, April this year as part of the spending round work, and was announced in June this year, and with the details to follow. What we're trying to do, Disabled Facilities Grant Say has been put into the fund. The whole idea of DFG being in that fund is it provides an opportunity for people like yourselves delivering the services to be able to make a case for more funding. That may come over as a bit naive, but don't forget that this is the way of the future probably, although the funding is only for 1 year. I can't imagine it being scrapped after a year. I mean the ITF, the Transition Fund, not DFG. I can't see it being ended after a year. It will continue to develop and go on, I'm sure. So the opportunity's there. What we're trying to do is we will still, at the moment, our ambition is, our intention is, we will still do the allocations as we do each year for each housing authority. At the two-tier level, obviously, that means the district council. That will then, the allocations, the whole amount will be paid as part of the whole funding into your local integrated transition fund, with a direction of how much should be paid out to each housing authority to enable you to meet your statutory duties under the Disabled Facilities Grant. And then the money should go out. It's not quite that simple. No money should be out of the fund until the strategy has been signed off by ministers. So there may be a little bit of delay in it, but really what the emphasis there is to make sure that there's a qualitative strategy there that everybody is signed up to locally. So that's how we're hoping to do it. Guidance will come out from Department of Health. It will not be greatly detailed guidance. Less is more now. But some sort of form of guidance is to come out of Department of Health. It was due to come out at the end of November. I correct that. It won't come from Department of Health. It will come from NHS England. And I think the idea is it will be signed up to by the Local Government Association as well. It will come out, it was supposed to come out at the end of November. It's now due to be published the 19th of December. But like I say, it will not be detailed guidance. But we are hoping that we will have finalised the arrangements, which I've just run through, for how Disabled Facilities Grant will be paid into the fund. So essentially what we're doing, DFG used to go from Department of Communities, Local Government to the district housing, to the housing authorities, including the district councils. And if I don't know, you presumably you see it, we used to do a letter out and a big long list of what the funding breakdown was attached to it. And then for the next 6 months, we field queries saying, from people saying, why is this council getting that much money? Why aren't we getting more than that? Blah, blah, blah. And I can understand that. It's a fair question. The funding mechanism is perhaps creaking a bit. We still intend to do this, but what will happen now is Department of Health will give the money to DCLG. DCLG will then send the money to the transition fund, each local transition fund. Each local transition fund will pay it out to the housing authorities. So there's 2 extra steps to go through for all of this, which is progress.
You mean then the local transformation fund, that being held by the local health authority and the county council in a 2-tier authority?
Again, that has to be decided locally, but one of the issues...
That means that the accounting body for the money will be the upper tier authority and the health authority. That's what you're deciding to do.
No, that each fund decides itself what its accounting body is.
Well, but the point is that if the money is the capital grant that was DFG money, if it's not being paid from DCLG, it's not DCLG that's going to divvy the money out as before. That's what you're saying, definitely. No,
DCLG will send it to each local fund, and each local fund will then send the money on. But the idea is, the idea is that DCLG is prescriptive on how much you go to each district council for, or each housing authority for Disabled Facilities Grant.
So it's ring-fenced to that particular local authority, and it won't be top-sliced or sliced in any way by that particular partnership then?
That is what we are seeking to do, yes. We haven't finalised it. I'll tell you the reasons why we haven't finalised it, just to stop there being any sort of concerns about it being underhanded. So for example, if we're paying it to a local authority, a council, we'll use Section 31 of the Local Government Act, where we usually do our Section 31 grants. We actually, at the moment, still have to go through some legal discussions to ensure that we actually can do it, that Section 31 is a suitable vehicle for it being paid into the fund. It may be that we use the NHS Act instead, and then there'll be a bit of a complication about how we do that.
Why can't it be paid directly to the district council?
Because it has to go into the fund.
Yeah, but it can go into the fund nationally. You're saying it has
No, there isn't a national. The national fund is 3.8 billion, but it has to go into each local fund. Each local fund has to get an amount of money.
That means that the local fund has some control over the DFG fund.
I would say that they do have some control because the local fund will only get the money once their draft plan has been signed off.
So if district councils and housing authorities are not being involved in the drafting of the local plan,
The proposal, the intention, and like Clive said, keep making it clear, it's the intention, is that there will be some sort of prescription in that we will say this is an allocation that must go to the the difficulty is suppose the main problem is when it's a district council in obviously a two-tier authority. So we're saying this is the DFG allocation that is to go to this district council.
the problem will be over time is whether or not that will then become a discussion point between the local people who hold the local plan, which essentially will be the Welfare Authority and Health, and the district council in terms of it being, if they've got the money, although it's prescriptive, will that change? Because if the mandatory duty still remains with the district council and the primary legislation isn't going to change, then will the ring fencing still continue as long as the mandatory duty stays with the district council?
Well, I think you've asked about 5 questions in one there, but
what district council finance officers were worried about in planning for their budgets in 15-16 or 16-17, as they do, is they like to have control over the amount of money that they're...
I can't say what's going to happen in 16-17 because it's not even been announced the fund will continue. No. This funding is for 15-16. That's all the discussions.
It is a change where you've got the housing authority with the mandatory duty, and the money is actually going to go to another authority before it's paid out.
Yes.
It's a big change.
Yes. You're not telling me that I don't know, Robert. I mean, I'm saying, what you're trying to get me to say is I give you some sort of guarantees what's going to happen in the future. I can't do that. I'm trying to tell you what we're trying to do now. What changes happen after that, I don't know. We're not even having those discussions. We're having discussions about how to get it to work in 15-16. And like I said at the start, it is an ongoing situation. And that's why, even if the draft plans are going around now, you must get involved in the discussions for the simple reason that this is meant to be the way forward in
so what you're saying is that we'll actually have clarification on the 19th of December.
The plan is 19th of December. It was the end of November. Clarification is coming.
That will be explicit then in relation to how the ITF for that particular area and how the money is going to be, money from the DFGs will actually be given to.
I think basically what you'll get is you're not going to get reams and reams. It's going to be very short. No. But basically what I've just said, there will be a prescriptive amount for district councils, which will be disabled facilities grant all the way through. The idea is keeping the DFG visible and make sure that the money goes. We're aware that we have to give the money to the housing authority so that they can meet their statutory duties under relating to disabled facilities.
With it coming in this way, does that mean that the regulatory reform order, etc., will that actually still apply to the funding coming through?
Sorry, what will
the regulatory reform order in the context how you can actually use that money from, and obviously the current grant given to local authorities is that from, was it 2009-10, well, in fact, the regulatory reform order came in 2002, whereby we could actually use the DFG money for some private sector housing renewal work if we so desired. It wasn't prescriptive.
No.
So in other words, are we actually saying therefore that the RRO, then as I would call it, is that going to be still applied to this fund when it comes into the local authority or not?
Well, what will have to happen is that the various organisations will need to be signed up to what the plan is. And this is where the difficulty comes in, because if you're a district council, you're not necessarily got a seat round the table for that. In some areas, district councils are part of it, and they will sign up and make an agreement. And part of that agreement, if the plan is written correctly, will be, this is how we will be using disabled facilities grants. So, but, I mean, in some areas, as I said at the start, where, well, what's it got to do with you, even though you're the housing authority?
Hands going up, I know you've been waiting for a while, so if you can...
Historically, the local authorities our certain local authorities also made a contribution towards the DFG pot to complement the DCLG allocation. Will that, obviously they retain mandatory obligation, but will there still be an expectation that the local authority or the fund or whatever then contributes additional monies?
Well, there's absolutely nothing to stop that. And I would have thought that's a decision for you and your particularly your councillors to make on that, and how you do that. I mean, the idea is the thinking behind it all. Like I say, in some areas this probably would seem quite naive. In other areas, I can definitely see why. The thinking behind it all is that other people, you're opening the eyes, or you're expanding the actual potential for other people, for other organisations to invest here. Now, like I say, I think that's where you've got to make the case and got to make the pitch and show what you can deliver to do that. But yes, so yeah, anybody can still start, any organisation can still put money into the grant.
But there won't be, I mean, obviously, I think most local authorities are in a similar position where we certainly used to be match funded contribution, and now we are less than 20% of what that was probably 3 years ago.
Match funded from your local council, yeah. Well,
Contributions and reducing costs.
Yeah, I mean, nobody. I mean, I'm not naive to the fact that ignorant to the fact that you know, funding levels have gone down to most councils, and puts the pressure on the funding on how much you can put in. I think the latest figures we have show that in 11-12, it was supposedly around about 80 million additional was put into DFG by councils, and the year before it was about 100 million. So that money still goes in. But also, I mean, I think as these plans, as these local ITFs develop, I think that, you know, one of the questions that's got to be raised is, as people should and acknowledge the importance that the role that housing can play. I mean, if you're talking about keeping people out of hospital, then it's talking about keeping them at home. Now, you know, the role housing plays on that. Well, what about local housing associations and, you know, other housing providers in an area? Because I mean, one of the things when I was explaining to the Department of Health, and I say, well, what about the housing associations? Because actually, not various. I mean, my hometown of Knowsley, the local council no longer owns the property. It's all in the housing association. So, yes. So, I mean, like I say, this is the start of what is the proposed way forward over the coming years.
Can we go to Jill?
What will the plans look like that local authorities have to put together? Will it be specific business plan in terms of we expect to spend X amount of pounds on adaptations, or will it be higher level objectives? You know, we aim to support people to live in. I think
Lorraine's, yeah, the guides go into great detail, but I think the plans, the focus won't be on where you spend the money, but on the outcomes, and that'll be, if the performance management is adequate enough, that will be behind the sign off.
There's less chance of adaptations being omitted if it's around outcomes, then that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, again, really, this is moving at a fairly quick pace, because we're having conversations with people all the time about how DFG will fit in.
The LGA NHS latest output on the ITF in October, there is a template which the health and wellbeing boards are having to fill in, and it does talk about the high level outputs, but also it asks them in terms of what their risk planning is and lots of other things. There will be a link to that on our website. I think we included the original LGA in the one from August in the pack, but not the October one. The October one goes into much more detail and actually has specific forms that they are required to fill in. But whilst I'm speaking, looking at it from another way, Phil, is there any way that the guidance that's coming up in December could actually require the health and wellbeing boards to consult with housing? Because there is no requirement in any of the guidance so far. In fact, they're not even mentioned.
No, it's not mentioned. I don't think there's going to be much requirement in this guidance. It's going, like I say, it's going to be very lean guidance. In fact,
it seems a shame because it's such a big opportunity.
This is why I'm putting the emphasis that we know the real risks and the real challenges here. This is why I put the emphasis on the that you have to make your pitch and say, this is what we can deliver for you. And I know it's not easy.
Yeah.
Can we go to Martin?
We'll be doing some tasks the last session where we're actually going to get you to tell us where you are, what successes you've had locally, because that's really important for us to feed all this back to people like Phil and Lorraine, to actually what's happening on the ground. Because, as Phil said, all this is happening higher up, and in terms of the people who are trying to deliver services on the ground, it will affect you. You need to be involved, but we don't want it to be an afterthought, because they're going to miss so much opportunity to use existing spend, because all of you are spending money on behalf of health and social care, etc. at the moment, because we're putting money in, and DCLG. It's a huge investment in their services. We've really got to make sure that they're aware that all this talent and all this sort of delivery service is actually there, ready to go.
I think the thing is, I know people are going to miss detailed guidance, but the thing is, government's been issuing detailed guidance for years, decades. I don't know if any of you have ever got involved in regeneration, but there used to be a unit called the Neighbourhood Renewal Unit. And an acquaintance of mine in a local authority, rather naughtily, used to print off every bit of guidance they went out. And he stopped when it actually reached the ceiling. Now, firstly, not everybody's going to read it all. And secondly, how much impact does that have? In some areas, yes, it does have impact. But really, why it has an impact is you have the relationships with someone whom you can go into and show them a paragraph and say, look at this, this is what you're meant to be doing. The emphasis is the relationship. If you've not got that relationship, then it doesn't matter how thick the guidance is or how slim the guidance is, it's not going to have much of an impact. And I've been involved with government for years, and I have no doubt at all that whereas for everyone that will find detailed guidance useful, on the other hand, there's people that say, not worth the paper it's written on, or worth me powering up my PC to read it. And that is, we acknowledge this, and we do realise, like I said, it's going to be different in every area. But I understand with the Disabled Facilities Grant is different because of the legislative framework. It's one of the few grants that is still around where you're obliged, if you're a housing authority, to deliver it if somebody passes the needs test and then is being means assessed. I accept that. But that also, as I think you said early on, you mentioned it's a ring fence. It's not a formal ring fence, but that's the way it's acting as. And that's why we're trying to find a way of putting it in. Now, you raised, I'm sorry, I'm not a local government finance person, but you raised the, what did you call it?
Regulatory reform order.
Yeah, I know, I think I know where you meant, how it comes in. But actually, in the terms of a legal framework, I couldn't say, so I better take details and I better look into that.
It's about describing how the money can be used for other things other than...
Yeah, no, I realise there is that flexibility. Yeah, there is that flexibility, but I mean, first and foremost, the point we are making, we are trying to ensure that we continue to make, is that it is given to a housing authority for disabled facilities.
The local transformation fund, integrated transformation fund, the local version, doesn't pay over the prescribed amount that you're saying that each housing authority will be given in accordance to allocation methodology. If they don't pay over all that money, is there any sanctions on the local transformation fund?
Well, I don't know how the I don't know how the actual funding letter will be phrased, but I would have thought, again, I'm speculating now, but I would have thought that it's actually enforceable in law.
The point is, it's unring-fenced budget. It's an unring-fenced DFG capital fund, so it's already unring-fenced. So they can actually use it for capital spend, you know, as... No. You keep coming back to this point. No, sorry. Can I just say, you do keep coming back to this, Robert. I can understand you can say that you're not going to get the money. Well, I can't give you a guarantee at the moment. How we're going to give you the money is the point to keep trying to make, because we haven't worked our way through all the technical details. But what we are trying to ensure, what we hope to ensure, is that you will be given a prescriptive amount for disabled facilities grant, but it will come from the fund. And what I'm trying to assure you is that what we're being asked to do at the moment in a DCLG is to tell the Department of Health what will be
the funding levels for disabled facilities grants, and now saying will be at the moment the intention is to use, well, we will be using the same methodology because we've got to say under the modelling that we use, which is part the old model, part the BRE model, this is how much each housing authority would get.
Can we go to
Just
Martin?
from Chorley Council, my name's Martin Sample. Similar kind of theme that Robert's been talking about there, just in terms of the fact that you mentioned it being prescriptive amount through the DFG process in terms of the payments, but albeit through the prism of the ITF, really, that'll how it be ultimately allocated to districts. Is there anything to stop the ITF locally within a two-tier context? Kind of looking at, well, we've got 13 districts in Lancashire, some of whom traditionally don't prop up with their own reserves, some of whom do.
Yeah.
Some have got larger waiting lists than others.
Yeah.
Is there anything to stop that, the fund holders saying, well, you've got more money, you've got shorter waiting lists, we're going to cut some of what was allocated from the government to you and give it to that other district?
I think it's, I can understand again the concern. I think it's essentially the same question. As it's not written yet, I can't give you a definitive answer. All I can say is we're trying to make sure that the housing authority will get the grant that it would have got anyway. 220 million split over 326 housing authorities. So I can't say what machinations might or may not go on, but the whole idea is that we still get you that money. And what the housing authority then does with it, what's signing up it's done with it, that's all to be signed at local level. But so if our proposals are implemented, then no, that wouldn't happen. One of the things to do, there's nothing to stop the housing authority throwing it back into the pool and say, well, let's split it up. I mean, you know, anything could happen. I can't see that happening, but anything could
Well, you wouldn't want a situation where, in a perverse way, you get authorities, district councils, trying to preempt the problem that I've just described by not topping up in the year to come, just so that they can then say, well, we haven't got any funding available to offer to it, so in order to secure the amount that they would get from DCLG.
That's exactly one of the things we're trying to avoid. Yeah. I mean, yeah, if we don't, that's one of the things for us. We don't want to be creating a new burden. We leave the mandatory framework where it is, and we don't give you the money. Then we are open for claims of a new burden. And I suppose you could say, if you've got somebody who's Machiavellian enough and wild enough, come up with your idea there and says, well, why not just say we're not going to use it for this? And then the housing authorities who aren't round the table, there's all the backroom agreement, go back and say to DCLG, excuse me, you haven't given us the money for it. So it's also a protective factor the Department of Communities Local Government who are responsible for the Housing and Regeneration Act, which is the main mandatory, the main legal framework for it. So it's in our interest to make sure you get the money as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just two quick points. The first one is, I'm interested in the sort of the reasoning for it only being for a single year, and whether there's any thoughts beyond that. And then the second part of that is, earlier on you said something about the timetable for the allocation of the funding.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could just clarify that.
I think the reason, I don't know 100% know why it's only for a single year. It's just that there was a 1 year, there was a 5-year spending review when the coalition government first came into power. And then for some reason, we did a 1 year spending, we don't even call it spending review, a spending round. Now, what will happen, I would have thought, I assume, in April this year, March, April this year, government departments will be asked to do another spending round. Now, one of the things, you need to do it all from scratch, or we could just sort of take forward what's already been agreed. I can't say for sure what will happen, but I would have thought there'd be quite a lot of pressure to be taking forward what's already been agreed. Nobody's talked about this fund continuing into 2016-17, but honestly, it wouldn't have been set up the way it has. It wouldn't. I mean, the whole thing is moving acute sector funding into preventative funding. It wouldn't. It's not going to work if it's just for a year. You know, like I say, it is the way forward. I don't think. I think that the way the fund will work will need to be tweaked, will be amended. There will have to be lessons learned from what goes on. I would have thought there's probably still work to be done about how the funds will continue, what shape they will take, what statutory requirements will be there. Maybe some other people will be invited around the table, maybe not. But I think certainly it's the way of the future in the coming years. Obviously, if there's a change of government, you never know, but no, we can't anticipate what would happen then anyway.
And there's a timetable of funding you mentioned earlier when you thought.
Oh yes, sorry about that. Now what I'm saying is that we have put some additional layers in, barriers in, and my understanding is at the moment that government will not be releasing money into the local ITFs until the plan has been signed off. In other words, it's an incentive for people for the local fund to make sure the plan's signed off. I mean, usually, well, last year, I think the Disabled Facilities Grant was paid at the end of April in one lump sum to each housing authority. So if it's all there and signed off, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be to the same timetable. But what I'm just saying is there is that sign-off requirement.
Are there any other questions?
I think what you're getting from all of this afternoon from comments around here is that when the letter comes or further guidance comes on the 19th of December, we want clarity rather than ambiguous narrative within that particular document, because I think that's what we want more than anything else, is clarity.
Yeah. So I would just go out that. Yeah, I think I certainly think as to how the Disabled Facilities Grant works, that's what you need, and that's what we're trying to get. Sorry.
Yes, it's one question about the ITF, but more immediate really. We've received one-off payments from government to supplement DFGs around about this time of year for the last couple of years. Is there going to be another one this year?
Those one-off payments, 60 million in total, 40 million last year, 20 million the year before, were Department of Health, from Department of Health's capital underspend. My understanding is the Department of Health have not had heading for an underspend this year, certainly on their capital monies. So as far as I'm aware, there's no intention for additional funding of it. But can I say, I think one of the important things is, as you can imagine, there's a lot of pressure on government on its funding commitments. And whereas 40 million and 20 million, 60 million, well, it's a lot of money to us as individuals, but it mightn't seem a great amount of money in the grand scheme of things. It was an example of just how far recognition of what Disabled Facilities Grant can deliver, not just for housing, but also for the health services, that DH put that money in. Because it's quite unusual for a department to be put money into another Department of Health, put money into DCLG's funding realm. That's what they did. I mean, I know it does whet your appetite, especially as people did very well to get that money out the door. But so I can't see it at the moment. I don't believe that it's going to happen. But do take heart that it has happened in the past, and you never know about what would happen in the future. No, thank you. This is the type of feedback that we need. Thank you very much. And my email address is on the front slide. It's philip.hayes@communities.gsi.gov.uk. And please note one L in Philip. If you want to send in to me, about what you've been saying, I'm more than happy to do so. And I'm more than happy to send out. We have an email list of people.
Yeah, basically. All the slides are going to be made available anyway. Yeah. And as I say, we'll be handing you all feedback forms where there's space. If you've got any questions, because this is an interesting thing for us, which we'll feedback to Phil and some of the radio as well. So,
when are these slides likely to come out? Are they going to come out?
It'll be after the final seminar, which is Thursday.
Next Thursday. So 12.
Sorry, 12. Okay. Great, so thanks very much for
Okay, thanks.